Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. That's the show we're talking about tonight. I am John Pollock, along with Wai Ting. Hello, Wai.
Hey, John. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy that one today.
You don't?
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
I don't know. Just the way you delivered it. It felt like kind of like low energy. Like you didn't really mean it. So what are you hiding? How was your day really? Talk about it.
It was really busy. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
That's about it. It's just another day.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Did you get out today? Did you experience the city?
A little bit, yeah. Did some yard work actually. So
nice.
I pulled a lot of weeds. So I was busy with that.
Okay. Well, congrats on that.
Thanks.
That
chore. Very satisfying. Yeah.
That's great. You can go to sleep tonight and know that no weeds to deal with tomorrow. Though they always come back.
They do. Yeah.
As do we. We never go away. We always come back. And tonight we are going to be going over Dynamite. And once we are done, we are going to flip on over to the Post Wrestling Cafe and we will go through Dark Side of the Ring, the tragic fall of Adrian Adonis episode that aired on Tuesday night. So look out for that. If you're a Post Wrestling Cafe member, we will be going there in about an hour or so as soon as we complete one show and jump on to the next because we are out of our minds. So that will be all coming up. And we have some news to discuss, but coming up this weekend, everyone, it is the start of our G1 coverage at postwrestlingcafe.com. We are going to have shows coming out Saturday with Bruce Lord and Karen Peterson covering the opening night of the tournament. And then on Sunday, Wai and I will go through night number 2. Now, New Japan World is offering both of these weekends events for free. So you can check out our G1 coverage and we will be covering all of the shows through the middle of August when this tournament wraps up. So go to postwrestlingcafe.com, video.postwrestling.com. Many bonus shows up there already this week with Volume 9 of Talk. It's the greatest anthology in podcast history. Wai and I talking. I'm hoping someone just takes all of these shows one day and puts them as one lengthy file, and it will be our lives extended. I'm not going to write a book. This is it. This is the book on tape.
Maybe somebody will end up doing that, but thank you for everybody who listened to it. I actually get way more feedback to Talk than like most of our other podcasts.
What are you saying?
For some reason,
the show that has the least prep gets the most feedback.
Yeah. Compared to like Rewind-A, for instance, I hear way more people like talk about listening to Talk and how much they've enjoyed it. So maybe I don't know.
Listen, folks out there, talk to me because I'm going nuts trying to figure out how my life will revolve around finding time to watch an AWA pay-per-view from 5,000 years ago. That was, for whatever reason, 3.5 hours.
It's how long pay-per-views tend to be.
You're already done, though. I'm sure you've watched it maybe twice by now. Had a rewatch in.
I mean, you know me, John.
All right. On that note, let us get into anything else you want to mention, Wai.
None at all.
Nothing. Not a thing at all.
No.
I'll throw in one more. Myself and Brandon Thurston, we're live on Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be joined by Stephanie Chase, and we're going to be chatting about all the latest news, an article she just wrote about the sort of representation and treatment of a lot of women in the wrestling media space. So I'm looking forward to having Stephanie on the show, and you can check that out on the WrestleNomics and Post Wrestling feeds. Let's get into the news. We're going to condense the news a bit. I'm going to save all the ratings notes for when Brandon and I talk on Thursday, but wanted to talk about the passing of Mike Halac, who spent most of his career wrestling in Europe for Otto Wanz's Catch Wrestling Association, but did have a brief but very memorable run as Mantaur in the WWF. One of the characters that when the WWE would put out all of its retrospective pieces on the company, falling on bad times and poor creative. His B-roll was front and center of, he was half beast, half man. And you see, he wasn't Centaur, he was Mantaur. And that was the character. And this is the better look for him, because he would actually come out with he would be walking out with the beast costume that he was under. It was even paired with Jim Cornette for a cup of coffee. In my memory, he was in the company a lot longer than he ended up being. He was in and out in 6 months, but I still think Mantaur is a character that does bring about not so great memories. I'm sure this is not the character this man's the 6 months that his career might be remembered for, because he was a solid heel presence for Catch, and that's where he started his career in 91 and ended up wrestling there primarily all decade long. Catch ran until the end of 99, and outside of that stint in WWF, that was pretty much his role. And some people might forget he did have a very, very brief role with the Truth Commission in the WWF, where they were putting this group together in the USWA and then bringing them into the WWF. You had Jackal, Don Callis, leading the group that included Kurgan, who got the most legs out of his run, Recon, who would later be Bull Buchanan, Sniper, who was a Luke Poirier and worked in Catch with Halac, and then Halac, he had his own role. I think his name was he was Tank, and he was there very, very, very briefly. But that was another character he had in the WWF, and his career wound down in the 2000s. He would just do the odd match here or there, and the last match in his career was in April of 2019 as a surprise member for the Clusterfuck Battle Royal at Joey Janela's Spring Break 3. So,
wow.
Yes, this was in New York City a few years ago. So
it feels like a fitting place to see Mantaur, I guess.
I mean, if you're going to finish off your career in one type of match, I mean, that's a hell of a one to be right at the top of your cage match profile. So no cause of death. He was only 55 years of age, but yes, rest in peace to Mike Halac. And we have a story on the website if you want to go check that out. Now, I said we will go over the ratings with Brandon. I did want to just touch on the Collision number because it's probably the most interesting for people. Although I would say the most newsworthy one was actually SmackDown on Friday, but we already talked about that on Raw. Collision with Punk versus Joe did 580,000 viewers and a 0.21 in the demo. So in particular in the demo, this was a much better showing than the week prior in Halifax. So the results are in, and Regina is way more popular than Hamilton, if we're ranking cities.
For AEW audiences, I suppose. Yeah.
And in general, yes.
Okay, sure.
This was a referendum by Canadians through, this is actually Americans voting. So fifth on cable for the day, which was led by the UFC prelims, which aired on ABC and on ESPN, as well as ESPN Plus. So their viewership for Collision was up 28%. And in the 18 to 49 demo, they were up 62% from the week prior. And the big jump, we talked about how shockingly low the male 18 to 34 number was last week, which was 11,000. It was up to 65,000 this week. So young men, they decided, you know what? We're not going out Saturday night. We're staying home because Saturday night's all right for fighting on my television set. So actually 18 to 34, the demo overall grew 179% this week. So this was an increasingly, these were some low numbers. And sometimes when you see these crazy increases, it's not because this week was just some mind-blowing number. It's just the last week was very, very low. So overall, I think you would take this as a, the sky is not falling, but I would also not look at this number as, whoa, boy, we're really out of the woods now. I mean, this is a fine number. I would say if you're doing a 0.21 every week, I think you'd be moderately happy with that. Like, that is a sizable enough increase over what the movies had been doing in that slot, but it's also not knocking them dead either. So it's, a top 5 finish. I think it's what you would be happy with, given what we're seeing Collision is, that it's sort of, I would say at the moment, in between Dynamite and Rampage. And on bad weeks, it might be very close to Rampage.
Yeah. This was a really big shot for a non-debuting week. And I do have maybe a little bit of like concern that this is sort of like the top end of what you might expect for Collision at this point, but it's also way too early to tell.
Do you think this Saturday does better or worse than this number? They won't have as big a UFC to contend with. Like this fight night card on Saturday by the UFC, it is one of the weakest cards they have ever put on.
Personally, I don't necessarily have much more interest in the Owen Hart finals as I do Samoa Joe and CM Punk, but I'm also not everybody. You know, like how interested are people in these finals to the Owen Hart tournament? Is there enough buzz generated from that FTR Bullet Club Gold match for the people to care? But I'm guessing at best it does something similar. But you know, maybe it tells you a whole lot about what the UFC competition meant for last week.
All right. Well, we will look ahead to this Saturday, and we'll talk more ratings notes with Brandon Thurston and go over all of the latest business news with him. One other item, it is the announcement of Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou for Saturday, October the 28th, Saudi Arabia. They pooled together their resources and they were able to bring this fight. I mean, they could be in debt for years by financing this fight, but they managed to do it 1 week before WWE will go back there for their next event. So we will have back-to-back events in Saudi Arabia. And it's been very interesting to see the reactions to this fight. We know that this had been a fight that had been rumored and sort of moving towards this direction. It's still unclear if this is going to be an exhibition fight or if this will, in fact, count towards their records. It sounds as though Fury's WBC heavyweight title will not be at stake. So it's interesting. You have a lot of boxing fans who are sort of looking at this as they wanted to see Tyson Fury defending his title against like Alexander Usyk or some other major heavyweight. And they're somewhat looking at this as, well, this is a guy that has never boxed before, that isn't even in the UFC anymore. And it's taking away from the big Tyson Fury fights that we want to see. And the general tone I've seen from MMA fans is they're really happy to see Ngannou, who is going, we don't know what the purses are, but they are going to be extraordinary for these two of what they're making. Like even Ngannou, like he's not going to make what Fury makes, but it is going to be life-changing money for him and probably for multiple generations of the Ngannous. So this is incredible money that he's going to be making. And it's funny as well to see that the Saudi Arabia component, it feels like it's much more further in boxing that like this just comes with the territory. Like this is it's there, but it's hardly a kind of highly debatable issue or anything like that. And to be quite honest, I think pro wrestling is somewhat getting to that place too, where it's fewer and fewer times you're seeing that aspect brought up. But I mean, Wade, does this fight mean anything to you? And I mean, because all these fights, like they are designed to grab an audience that is not typically a viewer of boxing.
Yeah, I'm not so much to me. I can't really say I'm a fan of either person. You know, even when they were having their actual like legitimate matches. Not to say this isn't, but I haven't really been following either person's career, so it's not really marketed towards me, I don't think.
Well, this is going to be going down October the 28th. It will be very interesting to see number one where this is broadcast on as well. Like if this ends up being a ESPN Plus event, that's very interesting when you have UFC that is in business with ESPN as well. So a lot of components still to be revealed about this fight and how big it's going to be. I don't know if this is going to be some giant blockbuster. Like it's going to be big. It's going to have attention. How big will it be? It remains to be seen, and what the interest level is in seeing Francis Ngannou in a boxing fight in a sport he has never competed in. And we'll probably get a sample of that with Nate Diaz next month in the same sort of equation as a guy who has no pro boxing record going into this world with the hope that his star power from another sport crosses over. So there you have it. All of your news can be found at postwrestling.com. We are going to be getting into Dynamite. And tonight they were at the SaskTel Center in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So maybe AEW was thinking, you know what a untapped market Saskatchewan is. When When does big time wrestling go to Saskatchewan? We're going to corner the market. I don't know if that was realized between Regina and Saskatoon. WrestleTix this afternoon reporting just over 3,200 tickets distributed for this show, which is, I wouldn't say a great number for a part of the country that is, I don't know how often they'll be going back to Saskatchewan. That would be my prediction.
I mean, I suppose, like, you know how much the building holds and how much do events typically, like from the WWE, for instance, if they ever run there, what do they do?
I'd have to look up what I mean, they're not running, like they're only at best doing house shows there. And I'm sure I'd just be guessing what they did the last time there.
Yeah, I mean, hard to know maybe what the expectations are. You know, are they primarily concerned about having convenient location for them to travel to so that they could get a TV show produced?
15,000 seat venue.
Oh, okay, then yeah, I guess it seemed it would be pretty hollow in there with what they filled. But yeah, I suppose they might not be going to Saskatoon too often in the future.
It's just, it's a part of the country too, like not the easiest place to get to as well. I mean, it's when you're talking about all your staging and your equipment, it's like if you're going to go to somewhere more remote.
But were they driving through Western Canada anyway?
Well, I hope they were not just all arriving here I think this was a flight for sure.
I meant for the equipment and the TV gear.
Well, I mean, they've routed this in such a way that you would be going from here straight to Calgary afterward. So yeah, I mean, you have that booked along the way. I'm just
like, if you're going to, if you're going to be going across Western Canada, maybe they thought it made sense to make a stop in Saskatchewan. 2 stops.
Well, tonight they made their stop, and we started off the show with Chris Jericho and Komander, who was out with Alex Abrahantes, and they showed highlights of past matches of Komander on AEW. And the match here, we saw a somersault into a Rana off the top rope by Komander. And it took some time to get the crowd into this. Jericho was doing a lot of crowd work to get them engaged. And in time, the audience picked up for this. But Jericho misses a lion salt and kicks out of a La Magistral cradle. Komander then drops him off the turnbuckle and does his rope walk into the shooting star. And that's when the crowd really starts to react at some of the high flying of Komander. Jericho goes to the floor, and that's when Komander does the rope walk into the twisting moonsault. Crowd is chanting, and then he follows up going for the Phoenix splash off the second rope. This did not hit at all and kind of messed up this near fall spot. But then Komander came off the turnbuckle. He's caught with a code breaker for a 2 count, locks onto Jericho and tries for a Dragon Rana, which is caught, and Jericho places him in the walls and taps him out in 12 minutes and 50 seconds. So I think Komander, you can see sometimes, he's not as smooth as some others, but does a lot of spectacular things that when they hit, they mean a lot to this audience that wanted to see this. But the match had its highs and lows, I thought.
I mean, I thought there were, maybe a few spots that weren't as perfectly clean, but I think they're really easily forgiven when you consider the amount of difficulty. Like, one of them was, him maybe rotating an extra 90 degrees for a Phoenix splash. And the other one, I don't know, the other one that was very prominent was maybe the code breaker that didn't necessarily connect. And I'm not exactly sure who you would blame for that one. Certainly he does enough that's spectacular that, at least for me, I'm not really critical so much coming out of the match, because he's just so incredibly impressive. That tightrope walk shooting star press, every time I see it, it kind of shows you the gap in evolution from something, like the Lion Salt, which maybe for its time was quite spectacular, but something like this today, it just, maybe in 20 years this will seem commonplace. Everybody's doing tightrope block shooting star presses, and just kind of makes you wonder how high the bar is going to be lifted in that amount of time. But Komander is exactly cutting edge. This is what humans are capable of at this moment.
It's funny that the 2 biggest pops of the night for moves, just strict moves, were, I would say, the rope walk, twisting moonsault, and a body slam.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, both have a high degree of difficulty in building, one was just, incredible physical, sort of achievement. And the other is great psychology, isn't it? So
I would say all psychology.
Yeah. Well, Jericho, just going back to this match, I think Jericho has advanced so far in his career now. You almost kind of forget that he made his name being a cruiserweight, wrestling other luchadors. And the announcers kind of made mention of this sort of being a throwback to WCW Chris Jericho. And I thought it would played sort of like a wonderful little nostalgic exhibition. Even like threw in the double power bomb in there, which was what he used to do back then. So I thought it was fun. I was a little surprised too that Jericho was leading so much into playing a heel here, when last week it felt very much like he was sort of like, teasing a babyface turn. But I guess they're really leading into this Callis thing.
Well, Don Callis comes out. His music, I liked it a lot more. Like it is a pretty distinct theme from everybody else. So he comes out and he notes the rating the two of them pulled last week, which was the high point in the demo last week. And it shows that the world wants to see us together. And he notes how they were once in a faction together 28 years ago. And Tony Condello licensed the footage to them. And we play this footage from 1995. You could barely hear any of this, but this was a total visual of seeing these guys 28 years ago when Callis has a full head of hair. And Callis remarks at the video that they were a couple of gods. And Jericho points out the fact that I've still got my hair as compared to you. And he remarks how Bad News told the two of them to always stick together. And Callis thinks that Bad News is smiling in heaven watching them together now. And he's going to give Jericho time to think about whether he wants to join him. But he knows what Bad News would want his answer to be. So really laying it on here for Jericho. And I do like the idea of these, like, it's a simple story of whether he's going to join or not, and hoping that the fans will care what the answer is, and drawing this out over several weeks so that it's impactful when you get the answer.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a perfect use of Jericho and Callis to a Western Canadian audience. Now, this will extend beyond Western Canada, but this is a great way to maybe start things off. And Jericho and Callis up until this point hadn't interacted in AEW in any sort of significant way. And I think this is perfect timing for it. Showing footage like this just kind of really cements the length of friendship that these two have had, and both are incredibly charismatic and they're captivating when put together. So I'm enjoying this Jericho story a whole lot more than a lot of his recent ones.
And there would be more on this story later in the show, but we go to Alex Marvez, who is outside of a vehicle that Jack Perry is locked in. And Perry says Marvez says, "It's time to knock." And he knocks on the window. And Jack Perry calls this an unsafe working environment. And all of a sudden, Hook enters the other side of the car. So Perry is fidgeting with the lock to get out. And he gets out of the car. And Hook comes to get out the other side of the car as Jungle Boy runs around to re-enter the car and takes the wheel and drives off as Hook gets out of the other side.
Right. Like a maze.
Yeah. It's like if Hook had just sat there, he would have been in a car with Jack Perry, and they would have been.
But Jack wouldn't have come into the car, I guess. If
he was already in, he got into the front of the car before Hook even got out of the back seat.
Oh,
so it was a little awkward, the timing of this. And then Hook just looks into the camera and says, "Keep running, Perry."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really not loving this.
I think they're gonna have a drag race at the end of this,
or maybe just like a car entering competition. Like musical chairs, but with a car, so you can leave.
Musical chairs, but with a car.
Yeah. I principally, I think I'm critical of this because I don't like how much of a 180 they presented Jack Perry as from, his babyface incarnation. I mean, we've never seen hints of cowardice in a Jack Perry at all. And not to say like he needs to display that as a babyface, but not even self-doubt. I don't think, we've really not seen something that would justify this sort of change, which does not feel organic whatsoever. So it's like with the opening promo that we saw Jack Perry cut as a heel. This feels like a guy taking sort of like a heel turn 101 training program. And on a big stage like Dynamite, I really can't help but compare it to the type of quality we're seeing on the rest of the show. And it's really exposing Jungle Boy, in my opinion.
Renee catches up with Don Callis, and tonight Callis is going to go out and announce who the 5th member of the BCC team is going to be for Blood and Guts, and he's going out there alone. And Renee asks, are you worried about Kenny Omega? And he is not worried about that gutless coward who turned his back on the family. And he doesn't expect any problems because Omega will be hiding behind the skirts of the Young Bucks. Now we go to the latest bro hang between MJF and Adam Cole from this past weekend. And these two are doing shots at a bar. And Adam Cole is still not wearing the team's shirt. And he states he lost the shirt. And this was Adam Cole trying to act drunk. And it was the most comical thing on this show.
Does he not drink?
If he does, he has never been drunk before, because this sounded like a man who was trying to act drunk for the first time. 4 women walk by, so MJF does the math that could be 2 for each of them, but Cole turns this down because he cares about Britt. So MJF approaches the 4 women on his own, and then Cole says hello to the cameraman. So they brought the cameraman to the bar to shoot them having shots, which would have made Cole going for these women a really bad idea.
Well, yeah, I think that's why Cole said no. And MJF suggested that he could make the cameraman leave.
So why would they have the cameraman here? Like, why?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Because they like to document their show the world their friendship, I guess.
Cole says he didn't lose the shirt. He has it. And he will wear it, providing MJF does what he wants to do. And he whispers in his ear, and you don't know what he's whispering. And we cut to these two playing Fight Forever.
Mm-hmm.
And they start playing. And MJF explains that this game is so much more fun when you have a friend to play with. And we learn that MJF has never played a multiplayer game before because he never had friends. And they stop playing and they have a heart-to-heart where Cole calls him cool. MJF says, you're cool too. And MJF suggests that they win the tag titles. And then we go to the screen, and on the game, they win the tag titles together. And what are your thoughts? This is I will say this. I thought this was campy as hell. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, if you look at the bigger picture here, your goal is for you to care about these two as friends, so that when inevitably MJF stabs Cole in the back, or Cole stabs this guy in the back, I don't think that's like the craziest outcome either, that this audience is genuinely sad because to have seen these guys bond. But I can also see a lot of people. That's why I'm trying to look at the ultimate payoff to this. But some of this stuff is like extremely campy.
Well, I think camp at least is part of the intent, like it's, but I'll say
not for my title program, I would say, which again,
that's sort of been my complaint for this entire sort of like anytime MJF becomes best friends with somebody, it kind of reverts back to, comedic MJF versus like serious champion MJF. I have that concern about whether or not somebody should be doing this, while being champion. But I thought this was productive, and it was productive because you got to see the result in the match afterwards. These segments feel very amateur, like in production, in acting. It has the feel of something you would see on NXT, like what something like Brooks and Jensen would do at a bar, for instance.
Yes.
And I think people are a lot more forgiving, or would be a lot more forgiving for these two, because the standard of quality that their match will ultimately has produced. We know to take these two seriously, despite maybe this sort of like kind of shitty, backstage vignette, because that they're going to give you something satisfying at the end of it. I think it's at least effective in conveying the story and guiding the audience along about what they should be thinking. Yes, it was stupid. Yes, it was cringeworthy at times, especially with how they forced that video game ad in there. But I thought overall it was engaging, and it worked for the end result later on tonight.
Well, I thought the match achieved the goal significantly more than these vignettes did.
But you needed this for the match.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, the quality of this. I'm not necessarily against.
But they're together, like it's like a package, right?
Well, I think there's still a level of just
This could be better, more slick, is what you're saying.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Right.
Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin against Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia. This was our first blind eliminator match of the night. So Guevara and Garcia come out separate entrances instead of together. And Darby gets knocked off balance while on the top rope. So Garcia is tagging himself in aggressively. And we have Garcia and Guevara constantly knocking themselves into one another by mistake. And the idea here is they're going to self-destruct against a team that does have cohesion between Cassidy and Darby. Garcia then applies the Dragon Tamer on Cassidy and releases it to stop Darby and is hit with a stun dog, followed by a stunner. Guevara's in for the save, and then a beach break is hit. Cassidy and Garcia keep trading crucifix pins and both go down from double boots. The crowd's applauding them. And then we get the announcement mid-match that the winners of this tournament will get a tag title shot on Collision on July 29th in Hartford, with the finals next week in Boston. So now we know what we are ultimately wrestling for and when.
And of course it could be against FTR or Bullet Club Gold at this point.
Yes, depending on what comes out of this weekend. Guevara misses the shooting star, and then a Dragon Tamer is applied to Cassidy on the floor when Prince Nana comes out and convinces Garcia to use the skateboard. So when he is handed the skateboard from Nana, Darby grabs it from the ring, and out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere, Swerve comes and nails him. And this was so well shot because you had no idea where this guy was coming from. And Darby is laid out on the edge, and it sets up the GTH onto Darby, and Guevara pins him in 12 minutes and 55 seconds. So the reveal of Swerve, this was a 10 out of 10. The reveal for Pac later, the opposite, where they had him on camera before the attack was made, and like everyone saw him ahead of time. But this one was very well done.
I thought this match was really good. There's a lot of talk about the pillars, but when we're talking about basically talent that's on the cusp of like main event stardom, I mean, it's these four right here that I think are like pretty much, head of the pack. And you can make the argument at this point that Cassidy and Garcia are both more complete and more advanced as wrestlers than even Jack Perry at this point. And I think it's completely fair. All four of these guys have solid personalities. I think they're solid promos, all of them. And in ring, they're all fantastic. This was a great showcase of their speed.
Can someone lose his pillar status? Could that be a stipulation?
I don't know. I feel like once you're a pillar, like it's something you're set with, and everybody else can just get mad at you for being named.
It's like being nominated to the Supreme Court.
Well, the three, sure, exactly. It's like the Three Musketeers in New Japan. Like once you're a musketeer, you're a musketeer forever, aren't you? You don't lose musketeer status.
Yeah, it's like it's part of your DNA. It was a good match, and it was the elimination of Cassidy and Darby, so that ends that. And afterwards, Guevara checks on Darby, and Garcia's on the floor. He doesn't care. And Guevara shakes hands with Darby, but then does leave with Garcia, and they will be in Boston next week. We go to this was so great. This second Nick Wayne video, and we go back to where we have photos and footage of him at 6 months old, rolling around, crawling in the ring, and he talks about how in this.
Are you honestly that surprised, John? Especially these days, people record everything and they put it up on the internet, especially of their children. So
I know, and this is we're talking about 2005, 2006 when he was 6 months old.
They had cell phones back then, didn't they?
They had plenty at this time. I mean, maybe this was on an iPod video.
Did those have cameras?
I mean, you could put footage on them.
Sure. Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, so he talks about how his mother brought him into this very room and informed him of his father dying, and he burst into tears. He felt lost. They showed this shot of this note written by his father that read, "You're the best son I could ever ask for." And Nick Wayne made the decision that he wanted to continue his father's legacy, and he is ready for the pressure of going to AEW. This was so incredible. This is one of the best jobs AEW has ever done of introducing a new performer.
Completely.
I would say maybe the best introduction of someone who's not coming in as a surprise, doesn't have a national name. This is what percentage of this audience has probably never seen a Nick Wayne match before tonight? Probably, I would say at least 80%.
So let me ask you, I agree with you, John. What's number two? Okay. When has AEW put any sort of effort into this sort of pre-production for announcing a guy completely cold for national TV?
Vikingo. I don't know.
It's hard for me. Like, I'm sure they have somebody, you know, Brian in the chat's going to say like, oh, this guy. Yeah, and I'm sure that they have been, but it's incredibly rare for AEW to utilize this sort of like pre-production element to introduce somebody to a new audience. And I was really pleased to see this week, as well as what we saw last week, because it shows you that when they want to, they can. They can completely tell you who a person is, what they sound like, what they look like, what they're fighting for. You know, in the span of like, you know, how much time did we get here? Like 10 minutes through the Darby video and this Nick Wayne video, and already I was so invested.
I'd say half that way. Like these videos were like 2 minutes each, like last week and this week. Like, yeah, it was pretty much under 5 minutes of videos. And I guarantee you watch these 2 videos, you're intrigued to see this performer.
I just hope this is the exact template that they follow for any serious prospect that they have to introduce in the future. You know, like and it tells you who they're actually serious about, because, you know, there are a ton of guys on this roster that could have used this treatment that never had it.
We go to Renee, and she's supposed to interview Adam Cole, who's on the phone explaining to Britt what she has just seen. So I'm trying to figure out all of this. Like she was watching this from home,
right?
Which happened over the weekend. And
well, it didn't air like until now. So,
and Cole had no belief that, like, yeah, Britt will totally understand this when she sees this.
What did Cole do wrong?
I mean, really? Cole really did nothing. I mean, if anything, like, what was he supposed to do in that situation? He didn't make the suggestion. MJF did. But maybe she doesn't want him hanging out with MJF because this guy's going to lead him astray.
They're baby faces now.
For now, yes. So he then apologizes to Renee, and then in walks Roderick Strong in his neck brace. I hope this is like Bob Orton Jr., and he has his neck brace for years.
You think he wrestles
yes,
in the neck brace?
Yes, he comes back with the brace on.
Is it a weaponized, like, bionic steel neck brace, you know?
These are going to be the video packages for Roderick Strong, how like his origin story of how he gets his superpower. He's like, what's going on here, Adam? And Cole says that MJF isn't a half bad guy. You need to trust him. And then he laughs at a text that MJF sends him. But then he keeps reading the text, and MJF says, I just saw Brian Cage. I think I've got the flu. And Cole is freaking out that he's going to lose his partner minutes before this match. So we go to Brian Cage and Big Bill taking on MJF and Adam Cole. So Cole is out there with MJF and getting reassured he's in the match. MJF's like, he totally steals the scene during Cole's music here. He comes out before the boom spot. He's doing the full on like Nakamura bit, and then coming in for the Adam Cole Bebe spot. And it's a great entrance that they have concocted here. Bill has a sucker in his mouth, and there's a loud MJF chant, which was interesting. And Cole reveals he is wearing the team shirt, which is available to buy. So MJF calls for a body slam on Big Bill. And this is what the whole match would be built around. MJF wanting to body slam Big Bill.
And the double clothesline.
And the double clothesline spot. And they were going to give you one and keep you waiting for the other. So he can't body slam Bill. And the crowd is sad. Then MJF goes to leave, and Cole talks him back in. We go through the crowd, or go through the break, and there are 2 attempts at the body slam that MJF cannot execute. And then finally, Bill wipes his ass with MJF's shirt. And this was very, this might have been more offensive to these Canadians than Will Ospreay using the flag a few weeks ago.
Possibly. It was certainly to Adam Cole. He looked pissed off about this.
Yeah. I had an unfortunate spelling mistake here. I wrote, Bill wipes his ass with MJF's shit. That would have been great.
God.
That's TNT ain't ready for that, or TBS. So MJF then bites his thumb and leads to the body slam. And dude, this place went insane for this body slam. Like this is everything I love about pro wrestling, is just making people want something. So when they get it, they lose their minds. And it was a body slam. Like I thought this was great.
Oh, I don't think it would have been like, imagine if it was like, I don't know, like a tightrope walk, shooting star press. I don't think it would have been as effective.
Imagine this Tiger Driver 91.
Yes.
And he finally hits it. So MJF makes his way, tags Cole, and after MJF delivers a thumb to the eye of Cage, Adam Cole does the same. So he's engaging in the heel tactics here. And then they call for the double clothesline. And this crowd, dude, they were ready to lose their minds if they hit this. And the crowd is chanting double clothesline. But Cage holds on to the rope and Bill drops both of them with his own clothesline. And they stop the double choke slam, super kick Big Bill. And then Cage lifts up both for the Samoan drop fall away slam that always looks terrible for the guy taking like the Samoan drop portion because he just gets crushed. And this was Cole taking that portion of it. Heat Seeker is hit to Cage and sets up the boom, and they pin Cole. Cole pins. It was Cage in 10 minutes and 14 seconds as MJF runs and hugs his partner, and they will face Guevara and Garcia next week in the final. But a really fun match, and this crowd loved it.
Yeah, I thought this match was great. You know, it's fun anytime we get to see MJF play a babyface because they're basically parodies of like classic 80s babyface matches. And, you know, still with MJF sort of like heel tactics adapted as babyface offense thrown in there. And they're completely effective. It shows you how much this guy understands psychology when it comes to, you know, especially old school babyface stuff. I loved Adam Cole in this, like basically slowly falling in love with MJF, succumbing to his charms, utilizing the same heel tactics that, you know, are in his nature. So he's realizing that, hey, like why shouldn't I get along with this guy? We're exactly the same person. It looks like he's having the time of his life, and great setup for the body slam and great continued teasing of that double clothesline, which will probably win them the tournament.
It'll be a great spot for next week. I agree. Like they should win this tournament and take this to then. And listen,
it's not going to be Garcia and Sammy.
It shouldn't be, certainly. Unless there would be a storyline reason, like you do the angle with MJF and Cole next week. But I don't think that's the time to do it.
I think they win the titles.
I will say though, it was evident here at the beginning, like the more of this story, like it is going to put MJF as the babyface here that the audience, I feel, is going to side with. And I think that you're going to have the same issue you had last year where it was, do we go with MJF as the babyface? And I think you're going to have that decision again this time around. That who do you feel the audience would get behind more, MJF or Adam Cole? I still believe it will be MJF.
I don't think you risk the same thing with Adam Cole because I think the audience genuinely likes Adam Cole. And I think it's all dependent on how they execute the turn and how they tell the story afterwards too. I'm sure they will give you plenty of reason to want to cheer Adam Cole over MJF.
They plug the shirt. They state the double clothesline is coming, and the crowd chants it again. Cole says he never thought this team would work, but why stop with just winning the tournament? We're going for the tag titles, and if we stay on the same page, we will win them. And they just show Roderick Strong watching in the back, and he's not looking happy about this development.
If Cole and MJF, like if all we saw of Cole and MJF on this show was maybe those vignettes, I feel like I personally, and I'm sure you too, John, would have been a lot more negative on the state of this program. But because, you know, ultimately what matters, especially in AEW, is what's in ring, and what is in ring here is so fun through the setup of that backstage vignette. I mean, I thought everything was great about it. You know, we all know the turn is coming. We all know the destination, but the ride is so entertaining that we're all happy to play along and believe that these two could actually genuinely be friends. And we're all going to play shocked when the turn comes. It's the same dynamic as we had with Jericho and Owens, Jericho and MJF. You know, as long as it's fun and enjoyable, it's all that matters.
Renee is with Jake Hager outside of Jericho's locker room, and Hager walks in and asks Jericho if he's actually considering joining Callis, and Chris says he doesn't know. Don made a lot of good points. There's a lot of history there. I just need some time. And Hager takes off the hat, and this crowd is stunned and reminds Jericho that I saved your life in Abu Dhabi 10 years ago. I left an undefeated MMA career for you. Like, Jake, I think you're doing much better doing this than doing Bellator 3 times a year, I would think. And my career is on the line too. And if you can't be straight with me, I can't give you 100. So he hands over the hat. And this was, besides the lay, this was the biggest material handover we got this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we all know he loves this hat. We know how much this means to him. So this was arguably just as meaningful as, Roman's lay being given here. I enjoyed this. There was like, if there was one ride or die member of the Jericho Appreciation Society, it would have been Jake Hager. This is a guy who followed Jericho first from the inner circle over to this. All he needs is Jericho and his hat, and he's already given up the hat. It tells you how serious this is. A rare serious promo from Jake Hager. I thought it was great use of him.
Yeah. Is everyone now questioning like what's going through Anna Jay's mind about this development? We haven't heard from her.
I mean, I think she's gone.
She's just moved on.
Yeah.
She just left quietly. Ruby Soho with the Outcast against Skye Blue in the Owen Hart Cup. Blue gets thrown into the steps by the Outcast, so they're ejected. And then Soho puts on a single leg crab. Blue fights to the rope. And then Blue hits like, it wasn't quite the tie KO because it wasn't the knee strike, but it was similar, but like flipped her over onto her face. And they instantly bring up the nose injury that Ruby Soho had from the tie KO. And Blue then is on the turnbuckle and gets stopped. And Ruby wrenches her off into the no future and hits it in midair, pinning her in 8 minutes and 47 seconds. So she will face the winner of Willow and Athena, who are having their match probably just wrapped up on Rampage, and that will be taking place on Saturday.
Thought the match was compelling overall with like a decently told knee story. I thought, Blue selling was pretty good. It was good to see Ruby win on her own so that she gets some actual credibility heading into the final. I think she's been doing pretty well as a heel, and heading into next week's final on Collision, I would hope to hear her cut another big promo, because I actually think that could be her biggest attribute as a heel that'll set her apart from the others.
And then they recap Collision, and we got the world premiere of Rap Class featuring Harley Cameron. What did you think about? Yeah,
you're not going to recap the
no, I can't tell you what she said in this. I have my limits. Excalibur is the most I can do.
I thought this would be a lot more like comedic than it was.
No, this felt like an audition.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we know she's been doing like a lot of music for a long time, like was doing stuff with like WWE, or at least like WWE wrestlers. She's actually really good. And this was, I would say, better than any song I've actually heard from Max Caster. I think she's a better rapper than Max Caster. Arguably too good for the
what's the point then? Like, how is this, like, does this serve the story then?
Exactly. Like, I would argue that this was too good for the type of story that they were actually telling, This did not embarrass her in any way. Like, it embarrassed the Elite, or sorry, the Acclaim. So how's Caster going to come back here?
He's got his work cut out for him.
Yes, he does.
He might need a week or two to formulate a comeback. Swerve Strickland against Nick Wayne. This was the last match. It wasn't the main event segment, but this was the last match that they put on late in the show. And Darby hugs Nick Wayne on the way out, and they showed his mother in the front row, and the match begins. And Nick Wayne leaps with this Hurricane Rana and then does a kip up, but turns his back to Swerve. So Swerve jumps him. On the edge, Wayne hits a Rana, sending Swerve to the floor. And we go to picture in picture where Wayne is hit with a neck breaker off the apron. And then inside, there's a springboard stunner that is blocked by Swerve. So Wayne turns it into an Asai DDT, getting a 2 count. Swerve hits him with a pair of backbreakers, and Darby comes out rooting on Nick, who then stops Swerve with a poison Rana off the turnbuckle and follows it with the Wayne's World, his version of the Oscutter, and a massive near fall. And this audience sounded just so loud for this near fall. Wayne tries for a super Frankensteiner, and it's countered. He gets powerbombed to the canvas, is hit with a Swerve kick for a 2 count, and then Swerve snaps the shoulder. And man, Wayne's selling here. He screamed like his arm was ripped off, and he is hit with the JML driver in 10 minutes and 21 seconds. Darby runs in, checking on Nick Wayne as Swerve leaves with Prince Nana and has words for Nick Wayne's mom. I thought that they did such a great job with Nick Wayne. I don't think the loss hurt him at all. I actually think, I feel that almost you give him the win. It's almost as though like where you go next with him. Like this is
he turns into Action Andretti. I mean, eventually the guy's going to lose. He's 18. Everybody, he has plenty of time to get those big wins. He's not supposed to be Brock Lesnar.
So I just thought they did such a fantastic job with Nick Wayne. I thought he looked really good in this match. I think that, you know, he's 18 and he looks like he's 18. Like he is going to, you know, he is going to be matched here, like visually with guys that look like that are full grown adults next to him. But I think that this guy is just like the sky's the limit for this guy. If he can, you know, keep everything together,
if he can stay healthy,
injured. I mean, that's going to be a key. Like,
for somebody
doing high, like he's been doing big matches for years at this point. And there's going to be a huge expectation, especially in an AEW setting, to stand out. And like, you look like at an Action Andretti, like that guy's great, but it's not enough that has separated him from the pack. So it's a very competitive roster to have that standout, but he was given every tool in the world to get over these 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm really curious to know like what sort of his course is going to be like in these early years. I mean,
I thought you meant school wise, because
well, this is essentially school. Like he's going to be in school like for professional wrestling like a full time. And I mean, I think the big challenges he's going to have to face are not just, you know, being able to like rival a lot of people on this roster at an advanced wrestling level, which we already know he has. Obviously, it's the promo as well. The video package was great, but it didn't really give you much of a sense of what this guy's pro wrestling promo sounds like. But it's also like being able to like manage life on the road, dealing with maturity, you know, and just dealing with growing up while like you're in a public spotlight. I mean, these are all sort of like maybe questions that, you know, we can't necessarily answer just watching on TV, but I hope he passes those. He definitely, this was a great debut, you know, all things considered, with like the video package and the match itself. He did enough to make an impression, had a lot of crowd support behind him chanting his name, and they achieved this is awesome chant. And it was also a chance for us to see his composure on a national stage on live TV, and the guy did really well. And of course, you know, having a veteran that he's wrestled before in Swerve there's no better person you could probably ask for other than Darby himself, and that's a future match that I'm sure we'll all anticipate in the future. Swerve was great here. Wayne sold that arm break fantastically, so I'm really excited to see how he develops. Imagine how this guy's going to be at 26.
Oh, it's you know, again, if everything stays on track for him, I mean, it's a huge limit, but listen, it's a ton of pressure on him to go from, you know, someone that was making a name for himself on the independents to now you're on national television. And like, let's be honest, like in this age where, I mean, people are vicious online. I mean, that's going to be an aspect that he is going to have to deal with as well. Like there is going to be a lot of, I can guarantee you that there will be the usual suspects that have their criticism of a guy that is 18 years old and guys are selling for him and all of this stuff, all the criticism that you can imagine that comes with such a larger platform that you're going to have. And it's very different being an 18-year-old versus a 32-year-old dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and this, to me, it certainly sets up like kind of Darby in like the Sting role with Nick Wayne. Like that is going to be the enduring story here, is that Darby now has like, he's in the mentor role. I
thought Darby was great in this match too. Just like being on stage, not interfering, because he wants, you know, his protege to handle things himself, even though he would have every reason to attack Swerve based off of what happened to him earlier tonight. Instead, Darby held back and let his student like basically, you know, fail on his own. But the cutaways to Darby looking like basically like nervous,
and the mom too.
Yeah, I would say Darby did an even better job than the mom. Like, the mom did a very good job, but like Darby felt very much to me like emotional dad at a soccer game, watching like, or hockey, you know, whatever sport you like watching his son like win a championship. Like Darby's been great. Watch like throughout this entire thing.
So the rundown: Rampage will have Athena and Willow, Lance Archer against Trent, and they showed all this footage of Lance Archer, who's been he's been wrecking shop in everywhere but AEW. Takeshita will be in action. We'll hear from the Dark Order. We'll hear from Tony Storm. And Naturally Limitless, Dustin Rhodes and Keith Lee take on Matt Menard and Angelo Parker.
The fact that they showed an actual video for Lance Archer, I mean, are we supposed to believe that he might actually be getting a push in AEW?
Well, I'll tell you, it would be pretty disappointing if we're watching the G1 and this guy's just doing absolutely nothing. So hopefully he's got stuff going on.
Yeah, right.
Collision on Saturday. We've got Ruby Soho taking on the winner of Willow and Athena, FTR against Juice and White in a 2 out of 3 falls match, and CM Punk against Ricky Stark. So only 3 matches announced, but I'm thinking that 2 out of 3 falls match is getting at least 30. Like, it's got to go longer than last week's, don't you think?
I guess so. 2 out of 3 falls, you would think so.
I think that one's going to go really long. Mm-hmm. And it might be a test to see, like, if we put out a 45-minute match, how would that do numbers-wise?
And don't forget, we've got the most gangster presentation ever of the Owen Hart.
2 of them.
Yeah. They'll probably present them at the same time.
They might do the same. Yeah. Could you imagine, who's going to be like the prom king and prom queen this year?
Well, you got the, I mean, realistically, who could it be? You know,
maybe Lars Fredrickson comes out and crowns Soho and CM Punk with the Owen Hart hats.
Sure.
Yeah. And then Battle of the Belts. We're going in with one match. Luchasaurus and Sean Spears. Broadway. Yeah. Dude, this Battle of the Belts is going to do terrible. Like, it's going to be people that fell asleep at the end of Collision that wake up and kept their TVs on.
Like, what's going on? Did they just like not have a card booked? Are they waiting for Rampage to announce something?
I'm sure they'll announce more on Rampage, but I just like
why not just do it for your biggest audience? You know, just to give this thing a chance.
I just don't. I don't know. It's just the most throwaway show this week.
But people, I mean, they're banking on people just sticking around after.
It's almost, you would be better served just to call it a 3-hour Collision. I think that would honestly draw better than separating it with a Battle of the Belts. Anyway, Don Callis is out for the final segment, and he announces that this 5th member is going to slaughter Kenny Omega because he deserves it. And then Omega interrupts, but then Moxley and Takeshita are out to attack Omega when Pac arrives, and he attacks Omega with a chair, and it's a 3-on-1 attack. They hold down Omega as Don Callis kicks him, and Pac gets on the microphone. How I've missed this guy talking. Kenneth, did you hear him?
Yeah.
And tells him, you shattered my nose bone. It's like, this guy, I want him on commentary every week. And he reveals he is the 5th member. I was like, oh, the surprise of it all. He confirms. And they put a chair around Omega's neck. And before they can snap his vertebrae, Omega says, go to the video. And the lights go out and the video starts playing. Like, thank God that this guy had the tech in his back pocket, who didn't save him up until this point. He had to wait. It's like, come on, turn the lights off. No, Kenny hasn't called for the video yet. So let his neck snap. So the lights go out and the video plays, revealing the 5th member will be Kota Ibushi. Is Killer Kota coming to Boston next week? And the lights come on, and now the Bucks and Hangman are out. It was like there was of no concern for Omega. They knew he would have gotten himself out of that problem. And they run wild. There's a super kicks by the Bucks and a buckshot lariat, and Paige says that they will finish it once and for all. Omega says Callis will never win this battle, and that barbed wire and skewers to the head are nothing compared to what we will do to you. So get ready for next Wednesday.
Oh God, we getting skewers?
That's amateur. No.
Like, are skewers the new table of, like, you know, hardcore wrestling these days? Have skewers made their way from, like, I don't know, like freedoms to national TBS?
Someone's bringing a chainsaw to Boston. God. So there you go. A pretty strong segment to go off the air with and getting your promos in, and the big announcement of Kota Ibushi that they sort of led you in the direction of last week, but getting the confirmation, and Pac that I think was you know, I'm sure if you were like going through roster members of potentials, like, he would come up, but I think was a surprise.
Yeah. I think a decent surprise and a decent substitute for Bryan Danielson. You know, storyline wise, like having
you're getting Kota Ibushi and Pac added on, like that's pretty top of the food chain when it comes to who you can have at your disposal, which again is just a ridiculous amount of access that they have to talent. Like look at the lineup of these 10 in this match. This is incredible. And this is they've announced 2 matches for Dynamite next week. I'm thinking this one probably
1 hour.
I could see it going. Like, this will be the big, long, lengthy match next week.
I would love to see that. I mean, have prior blood and guts matches been that long? Feels like they could have been.
The first one was around 45, I want to say, and
with entrances, with entrances, you're gonna fill a whole hour.
Oh, so yeah, when you include entrances, like this will probably be close to an hour.
Yeah, I like Pac as a substitute. I think like stylistically he fits in really well with the BCC's level of aggression, and I think even their promos would sound great together. Even though we're not going to get that much time to hear him promo with the group, but I like that addition. But listen, this whole segment is really going to hinge on whether or not the surprise of the Elite Fifth member was going to be satisfying, and people were not going to be satisfied, but anything but Kota Ibushi, and they delivered it. It's huge, I think. We haven't seen Kenny and Ibushi together in a long, long time. And that alone, I think, is, wonderful news to celebrate. Now, we haven't really seen a whole lot of Kota Ibushi recently. We only saw him in those 2 GCW matches. One of them was a Bloodsport match. He looked like Kota Ibushi, especially in that speedball match, taking a lot of risk in those matches. But in a blood and guts match, he's going to be sort of like, in a way hidden. Like he probably will be one of the last tags, and then he'll come in, work some matches. I don't know if I expect him to do a whole lot of like hardcore stuff, but why not?
He'll do some crazy stuff in this match. True. I think. Which is, at this point, like I've seen from Kota Ibushi, like, with that shoulder injury, and even in those GCW matches, like this is a guy that's like he's put himself through the ringer. He's 41 now. He might not look it, but I do feel those miles are adding up on him, and
it's a layoff too.
That's another thing, and that's you would think it's like, oh, he's had all this time to recuperate, but many performers, they will talk about the fact that it's much tougher to get up when you have that long layoff, and this is going to be a very ambitious match, I feel. And I think he's going to want to stand out in it too. So, I mean, there's a lot of intrigue, and of course, beyond that, of other plans that you can do with Ibushi. But it should be a very big show next week in Boston.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Blood and guts is usually, cause for just like spectacle and reasons to tune in. So we'll see how it does in the ratings.
All right, let's move on to forum.postwrestling.com. You can also throw in any super chats if you've got them. We have a bunch.
Well, let's move on to super chats first, if that's okay, John.
Let's do it.
Let's go to super chats, and this one comes to us from the Cat, who sent $5. Thank you, Cat. Cat says Roosh confirmed that he will be at Triple Mania again. The AAA fans have their main event once again.
Yes, that's on Saturday night. So he is not quit.
What's the main event?
Well, the main event is actually Vikingo and Kenny Omega, but Roosh is in the it's the mask hair tournament, so where the losers advance. So this was pretty imperative that they settle their issues with Roosh, who was not going to do this show and now is back, and it was one of the prominent matches on the show in Tijuana.
Who's he facing for?
It's the team.
Oh, the teams. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Is he? So you think he's going to lose his hair?
No, I definitely don't. I think Sam Adonis is probably your likely contender to be eventually losing his hair.
All right. Well, wouldn't that be something like organizes a dispute, like settles a dispute and offers his hair at the same time?
Yeah, you could.
It's not going to happen. Okay, thank you very much for that, Kat. Jake says, thank you for the support, Jake. Sends $5 to say, Saskatoon sure went on fire when MJF did the slam. Probably the first this arena has done so since Brett won the WWF title from Flair in 92.
Yeah, and this one aired on television, so the world.
I'm sure that people in this arena have cheered for something since 1992.
I mean,
in a wrestling context.
It's not like this is out in the nothing happens in Saskatoon. It's
like I'm sure the Moose Saskatoon hockey in CHL hockey team, would have elicited a good reaction at some point. So, do you know the CHL hockey team?
No.
Okay.
You referenced it, not me. So
I don't either. I don't either.
Some background
I'm trying to do some Saskatoon trivia here.
Okay.
Saskatoon.
You look that up. Let's go on over. Benjamin writes the MJF and Cole versus Big Bill Brian Cage match. The Blades.
Yeah.
Creative. It was so bloody entertaining. Getting a double clothesline chant to happen and the stereo mics promo. Loved it. When that clothesline happens, it's going to get a massive pop.
Yes, it will. And you know, just in case we were wondering that, like, is the double clothesline going to be something like just code word for something completely spectacular, like a springboard shooting star double clothesline? No, it's the two of them holding their hands together and having an opponent Irish whip run into him. So it's the best. Okay, we go to Damien from Winstead, Connecticut, who says AEW seems to be slowing their shows down and pacing things much better with Collision, and I for one am appreciating it. Tonight's show overall was fantastic. The way they built up Nick Wayne's story the last 2 weeks was really well done, and I hope they continue to do similar vignettes. It would be nice to see Jordan Oliver come in with him as well. MJF and Adam Cole are so entertaining. I wish it wasn't building up to them turning on each other. It's so over the top and fake, but you can't help but smile at the promos, matches, and vignettes. However, the Ibushi reveal felt flat tonight with how it was executed. I wish he was actually there tonight and not just a video of him coming. Plus, why did Pac just stand there on the top rope? All he had to do was jump down and he lands on Kenny.
Oh, the lights went out.
I mean, that's just
He's just coming back from injury. He's going to jump in the dark and hope he hits the target.
That's it. Yeah. He says, "Oh well, like I always tell my friends, if you think about watching wrestling if you think about wrestling too hard, it doesn't make sense. If you don't think enough, it doesn't make sense." Yes. Overall, a fun episode, but as a wrestling fan, there's always something to nitpick. Oh, we make careers out of it, so yes, we know that.
I don't think you needed the appearance. I mean, that's part of to me the attraction of next week is you get Ibushi. As much as I'm sure he would have loved to have, like, can you fly to Saskatoon to walk out for the final minute of Dynamite? From Muggin, there was quite a bit to like this week. The Cole MJF odd couple story took an interesting turn as they are surprisingly getting along. Typically, it would end with the heel outsmarting the babyface. I hope it's the opposite. I'm beyond glad that JAS is finally on its way out. And the blood and guts announcement surprised me. I figured Jericho would take up Callis on his offer, but instead Pac makes a lot more sense with his history with Omega. And to the surprise of no one, Kota Ibushi is on his way to Boston.
Seems like they're letting, the Jericho thing simmer probably a little bit longer before we finally get a result. I mean, next week, like Garcia and Sammy are in the finals. So I imagine that has to settle first before something like this happens, I guess. Commissioner Al says, extremely fun show tonight. My only gripe is with Swerve, Wayne, Darby, and even Aubrey all involved in the final match. I wish this show was closer to the Pacific Northwest for the Defy fans to make the trip, but I'm just excited for the return of that black-haired man, Daniel Ricciardo. Could he be he was not the fifth member of any team.
I mean, maybe he was up until, he was needed elsewhere.
Yeah, but he could be the second member of Red Bull before the sometime next year. What do you think of that? Daniel Ricciardo's return to F1 with AlphaTauri.
Sure, it's great. He's going to be a middle of the road driver. So,
I mean, there's stakes involved here. If he does well for AlphaTauri and Perez continues to slide, then he'll probably get the seat. So yeah, it's his audition.
He could. That's the only drama we're getting with Red Bull at this point.
Anything outside of Max Verstappen like dominating has actually been really great. McLaren had like an incredible weekend, and they're suddenly like in contention for second place. So Drive to Survive is going to just pretty much be like,
I think next year he should have to sit out the first half of the season, and he comes back and see if he can win.
We're at that point, yeah, where we have to impose those handicaps.
Kate writes, I felt like this was a particularly strong show in terms of the way it built up some stories. Swerve going over Wayne was the right call because it gives him something to go back to, while it achieved its goal of making the youngster feel like a big deal. Pac is a great addition to the BCC team, and I actually hope he sticks with them. I feel like he blends well with the general vibe. For a second, I thought they were going to debut Kota Ibushi in Saskatoon, which would have been something for the ages, but I understand the decision to get the big pop in Boston. Either that, or it was too much to secure both American and Canadian work visas, in which case the Paris of the Prairies was robbed. Do you think it's worth delaying the inevitable MJF Cole feud for another pay-per-view cycle to keep the team together, maybe even put the titles on them for a spell? So I guess if the idea would be they win the tag titles, is Allin too close? That would be roughly a month after Hartford.
Maybe they don't win then. Maybe just a failed attempt. Like I would hate for the tag team titles to just feel like a prop in a single story. Mm-hmm. And I don't think AEW has like done that. So I'm guessing they don't win. And in that case, a failed attempt is all you need.
Yeah, I think I think that ultimately is kind of where the story is going and where it leads to the tag match. And if they come up short or there's your miscommunication, and then it's like the audience is waiting for who is going to turn on the other. And I think the idea is to get you as far removed from that, to see these guys gelling so well that, like the other person here said in the feedback, they don't want to see them break up, so that it really does have an emotional weight to it when it happens from either guy at this point. And I think if you do it in such a way, you could have tremendous sympathy on whoever it is that gets attacked.
I think the answer to this question is, where is this match going to take place? The singles match.
I guess you just have to look at, if it's not All In, what would these two be doing on that card otherwise?
Could it be the spot for the tag team title match, or is that too late?
Oh, to challenge or
to challenge?
They've already stated that would be in Hartford.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So,
yeah.
So they can presumably win
they could win the tag titles in Hartford, which is at the end of the month.
Gotcha. Well, yeah.
You're up.
Okay, who's next here? Zubin made sure to correct my pronunciation. I'm so sorry. I hope I got it right this time. Zubin smokes Cubans. So I think I did right. Kota is coming. I'm beyond excited. Funny timing that I created the Golden Lovers in Fight Forever last night. Anyway, Saskatoon was fire tonight. They contributed a great deal to what would have already been a great show on the strength of the content alone. I absolutely loved the Better Than You Bebe match. Building to the body slam spot was brilliant in its simplicity. I was a little disappointed in Max for falling for the push-up spot with Big Bill, but I was assuaged by the possibility of it being him satirizing babyface gullibility. As always, thanks for the great coverage. Thank you, Zubin.
All right. And Roman writes, very entertaining show tonight. The MJF Cole pair is even better than I expected, and I'm really excited. I'm excited for Blood and Guts next week. Being from the Pacific Northwest, it was awesome seeing Swerve, Nick Wayne, and Aubrey in a ring together. Yeah, that seemed to be, for a show that you look at this lineup, it had, I would say, that was the major takeaway tonight. Like, yes, you got the announcement of Ibushi and these other stories that are moving forward, but like Nick Wayne was like one of the key stories coming out of tonight. And I think that's all you could ask for. And there will come a time, like Kate alluded to, when he beats Swerve, that it will be a big deal. And you can always go back to this. So I just think they did such a great job with Nick Wayne tonight.
Fantastic job. Yeah. It just maybe on a side note, but it really does feel like Defy, like over the past maybe 2 years, has like really felt like it's taken a step up from just maybe regionalized indie to like something approaching the level of like a national indie, that like, you know, their titles are recognized like elsewhere, like they appear like on New Japan now, like Kenta is like, you know, and they get brought up all the time everywhere. So it really, there may be like, I don't know, like how do people watch their shows?
Defy, their shows are available to stream, like all their major shows and such. Yeah, I think they do a really great job in a part of the country that's, you know, supports them in, you know, significant numbers. Like, I've watched enough of their stuff. Like, those crowds are awesome at those shows. Like, it seems like Washington Hall would be a fantastic place to watch a show for some of these events. And when you see somebody like it's cool when your big national stars come, but it's a different level when you have someone that you've watched come up in your system and now he's going out to the national scene. And I think, you know, it just creates, you know, such a big buzz for him and for the company by extension, like you mentioned.
I wonder how old Nick Wayne would have been when he showed up to his first Defy show.
Well, you know what? Somewhere he was crawling in that ring and thinking to himself, you know what, Julia Hart's already 3 years old right now, so I need to catch up already, because I think that we might be moving away from Julia Hart. Now we have the Nick Wayne meter.
I think we have a new bar for basically aging everything. Yeah, a new measurement of time, the Nick Wayne meter.
All right, we're going to wrap things up because we got another show coming up, so go join us at postwrestlingcafe.com. We are going to be chatting about the tragic fall of Adrian Adonis in just a couple of minutes. And then we are back Thurston and Pollock on Thursday at 3 Eastern. Wai and I will be back Friday night with Rewind to SmackDown. So plenty of shows to check out. Thanks to everyone for joining us live, and we'll speak with you.
And it's the start of the G1 this weekend, everybody. So go sign up to the Post Wrestling Cafe. You get all those shows plus MCU later coming out tomorrow as well with WH and Rich Fan. And one more thing, if you're a double or espresso patron, we are starting a new thing this week. Started on Monday for those of you who stayed till the very end, but we are putting out a video credit roll for all of us watching these podcasts on video, where we'll be thanking you guys for your support at the double and espresso patron level. So just a big thank you to all of you guys, and stay tuned for those of you watching to recognize some of the people that help make all of this possible. So thank you guys, and see you on the double shot.